So I have something super exciting to share. I made a wooden surfboard. Can you see it in the corner? I made that with my dad. So I've been wanting to have a wooden decorative surfboard to display in our home. So I decided to commission my dad and make a wooden surfboard ourselves. This is my first time really doing woodworking. I showed my dad what my vision was and he had a plan for how to basically do this with me. So I tried to find other DIY surfboard tutorial videos on YouTube, and there's a lot of them out there, but the ones that I found used a thin piece of plywood, and none of the tutorials that I found actually created a realistic looking wood surfboard. So I put together our own YouTube tutorial on how to make a wooden surfboard. Okay, let's get started, guys. Here's the tutorial. So the first thing we did is we grabbed some scrap wood. If you're buying new wood, then you can skip this part, but basically cut all of our wood to make sure that it was 6 feet long. So you can see us measuring, marking, and cutting, making sure our wood is more or less the same length. When you cut the shape of the board, you're gonna lose the corners, so it doesn't have to be precise on the edges. You just have to make sure you have the width and length you need for your board shape. My dad was marking which pieces are which. You can see like 1A, 2A. That will be important once you start drilling holes. Because we had so many pieces of wood that we were drilling into, we had to remember which side was up and which side was down. So this part was the part that I definitely needed my dad's help on. So make sure you measure and mark your sides. That'll save you a headache in the long run. We secured the wood together with clamps. We were marking just where we were going to drill through and insert the dowels so that we can stick these pieces of wood together and make them wider. Drill equal distance on both sides of the beams. We repeated this step and drilled in 4 to 5 spots on each board. We probably drilled at least 25 holes throughout all of these boards to be connected together with dowels and wood glue. Next step was sticking the dowels in, rubbing wood glue on the connecting points and hammering it together. After that, we just clamped it, and for good measure, just to make sure the wood didn't bow or bend, my dad screwed in a few wood pieces to the back to make sure that the whole board dried straight. So yeah, as you can see, we were using scrap wood, so the next day the glue was dry. We planed the surface of the wood to remove the surface paint, and then we sanded it down a lot. We also used wood filler to fill in the cracks where the boards were connecting. They didn't totally fit flush. That's another important part of making sure your dowel holes and your dowels are equal distance from each other. If they're a little off, then your boards are not going to sit tightly against each other and you're going to have a seam. So I filled that seam with wood filler and then we sanded it off later. At this point, it was time to cut the shape of the board. I recommend tracing an existing surfboard shape just to make sure that you get the most realistic looking board that you can. It's pretty hard to freehand the shape of a surfboard, and I have a surfboard at home, so I just used that as my template to trace around the board onto my piece of craft paper, and then I brought it to Idaho with me so we can use it on this project. After cutting out the shape of it, we taped it down on top of the wood boards and traced the shape of the board onto the wood. We folded the paper in half to ensure the shape was the same on both sides. So next we cut it. This was hard because we were using hardwood and our cutter was definitely smoking. After we cut the shape of the board out, we filed the edges down to smooth them out and to get rid of any bumps that came up from just moving our hand as we were cutting. You can just use a file and file out those bumps. We did it by hand, and I laid it against the wall, looked at it, saw where the bumps were, marked them out, and then just filed it down. Then we routed the edges with a router. We got like a rounded thing from Lowe's. I will link it below. I'll try to link everything that we use so you guys know. We wanted a rounded edge, so we just routed the edges of the board to get that classic rounded surfboard shape. Another detail that we did was that we routed the center of the board to make a divot, and then we inserted a strip of poplar wood that we cut to size. I just wanted that detail to be on the wood board just because I know a lot of surfboards have that paint line in the center, and I thought it'd be pretty to add a lighter piece of wood to the board just as a nice detail. So my dad helped me out with that. He just secured the edges and made almost like a sled to make sure that we were cutting a straight line through the board, and we did it on both sides. The final steps were to sand it down. We used an 80 to 220 grit sandpaper. We did a lot of sanding on this board just to make sure that everything was smooth. Because this was scrap wood, there was a lot of imperfections on it. There's actually a lot of metal nails on this board that we had to knock out. So it definitely took us a lot of extra steps to get this wood ready. If you buy new wood at the store, then you can definitely skip a lot of these steps. As far as the stain that I used, I'll link it below. I wanted a very natural looking stain. I didn't want it to be super like rustic mountain cabin looking grain. I wanted it to be very neutral. I had actually planned on painting the bottom half of the board white and doing a white arrow in the bottom. And I'm glad I did that because it really balanced out the rustic look of it and gave it a nice minimal, modern, white, beachy look. So that is everything that we did. We taped off the edges of the paint, spray painted it on both sides, let it dry, and this is how it turned out. So overall, this project took us 4 days to complete. Average, we worked about 5 hours on it every day. I had so much fun with my dad, and now I have this awesome wooden surfboard to display in our home that reminds me of him when I look at it, and I'm just really happy with how it turned out. That's it, guys. That's all I have for you today. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it inspires you to make your own wooden surfboard. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Woo! I made this. Look at it. See you in the next video.